Hello YouTube, it has been a very long time since I actually made a tutorial video, but I think I'm going to dive back into altars a little harder, and so I wanted to make a video for everybody. In my tutorial series, being an artist is easy when you're doing something that calls through to you, and you're saying, this is an expression of my soul, is an expression of who I am. This tutorial is going to be how to find something that I feel like a lot of artists have found that is kind of outside of your expression. It's something that is hard to find, and that is the right color for the right thing. So if you're in the zone and you're creating something really beautiful, you're kind of not thinking about your colors too much, you know? You're just flowing with it, everything's working really well, you're not obsessed with getting the color right. Altering is way different. You need to get the color right. So today we're going to talk about one color. It is probably the second most used color I use. Normally, I use a ton of yellow oxide. This is golden heavy. That is what I like to use. If I could afford all golden heavy, I would. I use a lot of Arteza, and then golden heavy for the colors I use a lot of. Today we're going to be talking about, oh, it's all screwed up, Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray is the color that I use the second most. I use yellow oxide the most, Payne's Gray the second most. And we are painting a Brea, which uses every form of Payne's Gray. So if you see down here, this is all, I'll show you my wet palette, this is all literally just Payne's Gray and white. Paint all the way around this Payne's Gray and white to get this down. Up here is a little bit more white. You can kind of see my gradient here. A little bit more white. Up here, even more white. And then as you get to the very top, you're pretty much pure white, but still a little bit of Payne's Gray. Around the edge here, you're going to go back to this color. And then in the like floating world stalactite things that are going on right here, this is going to be a black and Payne's Gray. And then you're going to kind of work in a little bit over here, that black and Payne's Gray, and a little bit of Mars Brown. Mars Brown is kind of like a very red, very rich looking brown. It looks like chocolate, like a milk chocolate. I like it a lot. It's really like a warm brown. But then you mix in a little bit of black, a little bit of Payne's Gray, a little bit of white, and you are going to get this like muddy, earthy part of where Brea is from. Is Brea Dominaria? I don't know where Brea is from. Or she like she's from Mirrodin? She a Darksteel chick? I don't know the actual history of her. We're gonna get this awesome color, all with Payne's Gray. So far, this entire background edges have all been Payne's Gray. Now we're gonna do a lot more to make Brea look cool. But right now, Payne's Gray is where it's at. So I am gonna keep on using as many parts of Payne's Gray to make this piece of art come alive. To be honest, Brea is like all Payne's Gray. That's why I want to talk about it. This is my ode to Payne's Gray. So if you're seeing over here, I'm adding even more to my wet palette. Hopefully you've watched my tutorial on wet palettes. They're very important while you're painting, to keep everything really thin and be able to kind of go back to these thin layers that you're making. So as you see the way that I mix colors, I just dip my paintbrush into what color I want, drag it all together, and then just like wiggle. As I'm wiggling, I'm spreading it out. The wet palette is going to make sure that I can kind of come back to it way easier. I also have this technique that I really haven't seen. I mean, I've seen some people do it where you just use the tip of your finger to kind of blend and dry brush whatever you have onto that. You take off like the top layer and it kind of gives it like a nice blending. Hopefully you can see how that kind of blends it all in there. If you look, they're all just versions of Payne's Gray. That's why I really wanted to talk about this. She also uses a really cool yellow, brown, black palette which I've always really liked. It kind of is like the best way to get gold is with brown and yellow. But because we're adding that black and we're putting it on top of some Payne's Gray, it comes out this like dirty, like it looks like seawater type of like muck. I really like it. I really like that color. I'm actually gonna put it in a bunch of places on this. So the way I paint Brea, normally if you've seen my altars, I don't do a ton on this bottom. I try to stick to this top area. I think that's where most people are looking. But for her, the bottom's easy. You can just do 5 little stalactite floating things, and it translates pretty fucking well. So again, we have this like well here, this well of Payne's Gray, and you're gonna continually just keep on going back to it and using it. Now, here's how to explain what Payne's Gray is. Payne's Gray is it's like a really dark muted blue. And when you use Payne's Gray, I never really have Payne's Gray right out of the tube. I always add some white or some black or something. It gives it this muted navy that is really, really beautiful. I don't, I should have looked up the history of Payne's Gray while I'm talking to you guys about it, because I'm sure it has a rich history. I know a lot of artists love using this color. I don't know the exact reason why it's called gray and not a blue, because to me it looks blue. I don't know if I'm just colorblind in this, but I don't think so. People are buying my paintings, so I'm pretty sure I know what color matches with what color. But this is a really, really beautiful navy blue. It's already muted, coming right out. What's really hard when you're using high quality paints is muting them down. Because as you're using them, you paid for high quality paints. The people who made these paints want them to be bright and shiny and dope. They want you to put down a white and have it like kind of blow your mind. Payne's Gray is already muted. It's rich. Sure, it's rich, but it already has that muted feeling where it's navy, not like a bright blue. And that is something that I think you use to your advantage. Because, like I said, your rest of your palette comes out bright and bold and beautiful. And Payne's Gray has that like really easy to see dullness. It's still out there. People are still globbing onto it. When I see an artist use Payne's Gray in any way, I'm like into it. Like I said, I use so much of this color. It's too much yellow. I use so much of this yellow. So much of this color that I really learned how little to put into everything. But when I see people do original art and they have a bunch of Payne's Gray, you can, obviously you can go as nuts as possible. Because it's your painting. This, we are trying to get into the mind of, what is this, Cliff Childs? Who painted Brea. So we're getting into their mind and trying to see what they would extend this out as. And so when I look at this, and I try to get into Cliff Child's mind, I am thinking, well, this guy just went buck wild on some Payne's Gray and white, and so I'm going to do the same thing. So if this is your first time seeing my channel, I always try to do a really nice background. Make sure this background is killing it, and then you build up from there. So right now, I'm just focusing on this like water void that she's kind of like standing in front of. I kind of want to extend this out, but I'm not going to. The water void that she's standing on is all the same color. So I'm throwing that in there. Throwing some highlights where there needs to be highlights. Right now, I'm going to take rose. I'm going to throw down some rose to get the background as well. And get those little like lightning bolts coming through. Because she is like an ethereal goddess here. And I'm just going to do some rose and some white. A little bit more rose. I should be blending this color with a bigger paintbrush just to make it go faster. Use a fuckload of rose, a little bit of white, just to You know, your lighter colors you can paint over way easier than the darker colors, so I always try to strive to make lighter versions of stuff while I'm like kind of like not 100% confident I know how to make the color. Oh, this one came out perfect the right way, like right away. So now these lightning bolts kind of coming out of nowhere. Bam, bam, bam. Lightning bolts. Lightning bolts. So when someone picks up this card, they can see where these lightning bolts are coming from. I also try to say, okay, this person's probably played this card a million times. If they're paying me to extend the art, they probably already played with this, like a foil version of this card or something. So I'm trying really hard to give them a new experience. And luckily for them, I'm using the exact right color that the artist was, which was Payne's mother effing gray. It's just so satisfying. I always tell new people who are starting off to get the 60-pack of Arteza. I'm still on that train. I would also say to get this golden heavy of Payne's gray and of the yellow oxide. You're just going to use it so much. You're going to use so much Payne's gray. Why not get the elevated, more expensive version? When I say more expensive, like it's $8 for a gigantic tube. That's not expensive. But, you know, instead of, what is it, $40 for 60 tubes for the Arteza, it's obviously more expensive, but you're going to be using it so much. So once you go through the Arteza version of Payne's gray, please do yourself a huge favor and pick up some golden heavies. And I would suggest yellow, oxide, and Payne's gray. Unbelievable. I'm going to finish up this Brea. I will put the finished product of a Brea at the very end. Thank you guys so much for listening to me again. Please, in the comments, if you made it this far, in the comments, tell me the next thing you want to talk about. Or I'm just going to keep on making stuff. I think I'm going to do shadows as my next one. I think I'm going to do break apart frames as my next one. I might do another love letter to a color. You know what? While we're here doing love letters to colors, also cold gray. Holy crap. This is another, it's pretty much in the same family as Payne's gray. It is like a very bluish gray. This one is just already pre-mixed. I don't have to use my Payne's gray and white. This cold gray is so good. If Golden made a good cold gray, I would have got it. It is just so buttery. There's a lot of like steel and metal that is just, I just use it straight from the tube. So that really helps. I'd say get some cold gray. That one's really good. But yeah, these grays, these blues, you're going to use a lot of. Because there's a lot of blue in nature. You're going to see it in skies. You're going to see it in water. You're going to see it on rocks. You're going to see it in shadows. So the artists are going to use a lot of blues, grays, blacks. You want to make sure that your blues, your grays, your blacks are all really solid. You want to make sure your yellows are really good too, and your oranges, because those are very hard to apply and you might have to apply over and over and over again. That's why Golden Heavy is better. We're still using the wet palette, which is going to keep it wet just a tiny, tiny bit, keep it a little bit more viscous. But the heavy part of it, make sure that when you apply it, you don't have to apply 6 coats. Because once you start applying more than 2 or 3 coats to something, doesn't matter how thinly you're putting it down, it's going 100% to look chunky and be chunky. If you have a good, nice Golden Heavy to start with, and from the Golden Heavy that you're starting with, you are only applying 1 or 2 very thin, watered down layers, that is going to be a lot better looking, even though it has heavy in the name, than doing 1, 2, 3, okay, I need another one, okay, I'm going to add another color on top of that. Those chunky layers are going to shine through, and they're not going to look good, and you get a lot of that on yellows. If you want to make something solidly yellow, it's incredibly hard. It's very, very hard to go, okay, this is yellow now, this is solidly yellow. So you see my technique, I'm just like kind of dragging it and then dry brushing it on with my finger. It's something you should practice on something like this, something that has rocks. Very easy to do. When I was making Goloses back in the day, when people were playing a lot of Goloses, that's all I did was just drag things around. Thank you for coming to my talk about the beautiful, beautiful color Payne's Gray. I'll talk to you guys all very soon. See you guys.